I was astonished when I was studying where our culture was going. This is a class about 35 years ago in seminary, and they were telling us that, well, there are going to be all sorts of families that never have meals together. There will be no Sunday suppers. There'll be no routine in the evening or in the morning. Everybody's just going to be grabbing a meal wherever they can, and that's what I've seen develop. And what struck me this week as I prepared for today was many people have simply trivialized food. That it's no big deal. That it's it's fast food. Pay your money, get your food, go. And so mealtime has no significance. And I found myself wondering, well, then what does? What does? Well, in the church, we have a different understanding about food. I mean, that's what these lessons all seem to come back to, is this whole business of the bread of life. Now, sometime this week, almost everybody here will make a trip to the grocery store where you will probably pick up a loaf of bread. Or, like many others, you'll go to City Park on Saturday morning to the bread guy at Serious Bread and you get the real thing. But anyway, every one of us will pick up a loaf of bread somewhere this week. And yet, the whole process of getting that bread has become so mundane, so ordinary, we really don't even think about it. Yet in many parts of the world, people are starving. Over 1 billion people now live with inadequate food. And I want to tell you, if the only thing missing in your life is food, your life will be really, really miserable. And in America, most of us need to be on a diet. Mississippi now has the great distinction of being the fattest state, which is something not to take pride in. But since the earliest of times, bread has had enormous symbolic power, because in ancient societies, the supply of bread was the first mark of their wealth. If there was adequate food, they were a prosperous society. And many events in the Bible revolve around the subject of bread. 2 weeks ago, the gospel reading was about the miracle of the loaves and fishes, when Jesus took 2 fish and 5 little loaves and fed a multitude, over 5,000 people. But this isn't the only event in the Bible that revolves around bread. The greatest event in the Old Testament, the parting of the Red Sea, is really about bread. Because why were the Hebrews in Egypt in the first place? Because there was a famine in Canaan. And they all migrated to Egypt. And so it wasn't so much about bread as it was the lack of bread that caused them to go to Egypt. And then in Egypt, this momentous sequence of events is set into play by God himself, and we have the founding of the Hebrew people, God's chosen people. But that's not the end of the story about bread in the Bible. Today in Exodus 16, we see God raining down bread from heaven to feed his people. The people had been grumbling against Moses. You didn't know that, did you? That sometimes people in groups sometimes grumble. They do. And they grumble a lot in New Orleans. And they were grumbling against that wonderful guy Moses, who was trying to get them to the promised land. And they kept thinking about all those really great restaurants in Egypt, where they had such great food, such great times. And so God takes their need, or Moses takes their need to God, and God provides a miracle. He rains down manna from heaven. But look, what's not clear here is it happened every night until they reached the promised land. This is a continuous miracle. God fed them night after night after night, day after day after day. But that's not the end of it. Bread is also the heart of the story when Jesus is led into the wilderness after his baptism to be tempted by Satan. And after he's been in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, Satan says, if you're really the Son of God, you can turn this stone into bread. And Jesus says, he quotes Scripture, he says, man does not live by bread alone. And that's not the whole verse, but that's a way of repelling that temptation. Man does not live by bread alone, because what Jesus is implying is that we also have a minimum daily requirement for words. Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that falls from the mouth of God. And so you and I need to be fed in a variety of ways. Yes, with material bread, but we need spiritual bread as well. And finally, we have Jesus praying one day when his disciples walk up to him and see him, and they're so impressed with the way he prays that they say, teach us how to pray. And in the midst of that prayer, Jesus reminds us all of the importance of bread. He prays, give us this day our daily bread. And so daily bread is a really big deal. It doesn't matter what kind of diet you find yourself on, if you're a fast food addict or if you're one of those banquet people who likes course after course after course, and you want to do it when you're dressed to the nines, and or anything in between. You want your daily bread. And it comes from God. If we get no daily bread, no food, you find life is really miserable, not worth living. And so in today's gospel, Jesus tells the people that they're looking for him for the wrong reason. They're looking for him for the wrong reason. Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. Well, they don't get it. And remember, this is one of the techniques in the Gospel of John. It starts off on an ordinary level, and all of a sudden it bounces up to this very ethereal, spiritual level, and you can't quite figure out how it happens. That's the way it seems to work. What must we do? What must we do to do the works that God requires? And Jesus tells them, the work of God is this, to believe in the one he has sent. Now, in spite of having just performed this miracle of the loaves and fishes, which all of these people saw, and they've come looking for him to do more, in spite of that, they're now going to ask him, well, what will you do? What miraculous sign will you give that we may see it and believe you? Well, hey, what about what we just did on the other side of the lake? They've forgotten all about it. And I'm not sure why this is true, but human beings won't believe until they want to believe. And it's not my job to make you believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Faith is a gift of the Holy Spirit, and you can ask God to give you faith, but I can't make you believe anything unless you want to.